There are a few things I love more than a good RPG in video games, and the Nintendo Switch is kind of the perfect console for it. I mean, just think about it. If you want the full-fledged console experience, you can play on a television. But if you're on the go and you have a commute for work, or you just like to take your gaming with you when you're on the road, the Switch allows you to pick up those full console RPGs and bring them with you. What's going on, everyone? I'm Jay, my channel is Square Pegs. Today, we are looking at 10 fantastic RPGs on the Nintendo Switch. I'm a sucker for new gameplay experiences, and for me, Bravely Default, the entire series is really kind of a study in how to plus an RPG experience to make it more in-depth, more challenging, and more fun to play. Now, Bravely Default 2 on the Nintendo Switch is one of my favorite games. I absolutely adore it. I think it is a brilliant piece of just amazing design from Square Enix. And the reason for that is, one, it's got a great story. It actually has a really compelling story that you're going to want to follow along with and dive deep on with fantastic combat. From a graphical perspective, I understand that this isn't going to be something for everybody. Some people are going to be turned off by the character appearances, and I can't do anything about that. For me, it doesn't bug me, because graphics are, they're kind of the icing on the cake for me. I want a core, solid gameplay experience to be able to enjoy a game, and this one has it in spades. You are able to level up your characters and upgrade and acquire new gear to make your character continuously better and to continuously improve their stats and their abilities, but the combat is where Bravely Default shines. You are able to either be brave or default, which is where you defend, and as you defend, you're going to add points which allow you to be braver in your combat, giving you more opportunities to attack and perform different skill sets as you play. So if you want to go in and you know you're going to have a big battle and it's going to be tough, you can defend a couple times in a row, meaning when you do attack, you're going to be able to attack 3 or 4 times in a row and cause just tremendous damage. It's all about balancing your actions and balancing what you perform in a fight to make sure you're able to win. If you've never played a Bravely Default game, this one is magnificent. I think it is one of the unsung heroes on the Nintendo Switch and something that is just a superb, superb gameplay experience.
Nice weather today, huh?
Monarch from NIS America is a really, first off, thanks for the review code on this. I really appreciate it. I don't want to call it a unique game because I think it borrows very heavily from a lot of tropes. In certain JRPG scenarios, it feels very heavily influenced by Shin Megami Tensei and Persona, but that's not a bad thing because it does it all with its own coat of paint. You play as a character that wakes up in high school, you have no memory of who you were. This is where the Persona side comes in, and you are going through the school to try and save people that are trapped in the mist. Now, you do this by going throughout the different parts of the school. You're basically there to save the student body of your high school, and you do that by going to different parts of the school and entering the mist, which is where the madness begins. And it's really clever because you have a madness meter that you have to maintain, which if it tops out, you'll pass out and you'll wake up in the infirmary and you have to start all over again. And as you play, you're going to find phones that allow you to enter the other world, which is where very heavy Persona themes come into play. You are going to have different egos that you're able to tap into, which give you different abilities and different appearances, basically. So it's very much like utilizing Personas in the Persona series, but each character has one main ego that they utilize and a certain set of abilities that they maintain. And the combat in the game is really clever because it's very much chess, for lack of a better term. You're moving around the board and you're attacking in certain ways and using different abilities, which feels like an entry from another game on this list in the Trails of Cold Steel series. You move around. It's not an active combat system. It is a turn-based combat system, but it's not where your characters are standing still. You'll need to reposition to give you different bonuses for using a back attack and things like that. And the closer you are to your compatriots, you'll actually have support attacks where they will assist you when you attack to deal more damage. So it's very strategic in the way you want to place your characters, but the story is pretty deep, it's pretty dark, and I really enjoy this one. Like, this feels like a long-lost member of the Persona series, and that's kind of the nicest compliment I can give it, because it feels like it fits right in to that fantastic Shin Megami Tensei world, and I just love it. Really great game. Alright, you guys know me. I always have to have at least one kind of controversial choice on these top 10 lists that I do, and this one is probably going to be it. It is Monster Sanctuary. Now, this is a game that my son pestered me to play for months. He told me how great it was, and he told me how much I needed to try it, and I just didn't do it. And he has it on Game Pass. And I remember going into his room one day, and he was playing it, and I was kind of fascinated by what he was playing. And when I realized it was Monster Sanctuary, I immediately went over to the Switch and bought it. And the game is kind of brilliant. It is one half Metroid, one half Pokemon? I think that's probably the best way to put it. So you play as a character that goes around a monster sanctuary and you're looking for eggs to help raise monsters. And you do this by exploring through kind of a Metroidvania style landscape. You are going to be traversing in a platforming style, going back and forth, using different abilities that you unlock from your monsters that you capture and you raise to get into other aspects of the levels. Like you'll see here, I actually burned down a section of the vines to go in and get these 2 treasure chests. And that's a really brilliant way to play these games because it is, at its core, kind of the Metroidvania aspect, but where it isn't a Metroidvania is when you get into the combat scenarios, and that is decidedly a turn-based RPG. You have 6 monsters that you're going to carry with you at all times, and every time you go into combat, you're going to choose which 3 to send into battle. There are weaknesses and strengths based on their type, and you're going to use those in fights, and you have to manage the mana, and you get skill points to actually create a custom monster as you play. And while I think some people might look at this and say that's not an RPG, it's a Metroidvania, the skill set that you're able to develop and the way that you're actually able to build your monsters out, to me, that makes this a pure RPG. It's a fantastic game. I only have this one digitally. I do not have a physical copy of it, but Monster Sanctuary is magnificent.
You're mine!
There are certain series that I wish would have their publishing rights sorted out because I very badly want to have them all on the Switch, and one of them is the Legend of Heroes series, and this one in particular is my favorite of the ones that I've been able to play, Trails of Cold Steel 3. This is a very traditional JRPG. There are turn-based battles where you're going to be able to move your character, get them in place. It's kind of strategic. It feels a little bit like Monarch in that regard. There's a lot of really neat aspects to this game, including the combat, where you're going to have your Brave Order to allow you to build up resources to get different buffs and heals, as well as your break system, which is going to give you a break gauge bar over enemies, where when you deplete it, they're going to be weakened for a turn. You can be able to pile on and do more damage, and it's great. The combat is spectacular. But the storyline in this one really gets me. This one is really cool. So this takes place after the events of Trails of Cold Steel 2, and nice of NIS America to really include kind of a recap of the previous 2 games in this one, since they don't have the publishing rights. I thought that was pretty cool. You play as Rien Schwarzer, and you are a military professor at the Thor's Branch campus, where you are teaching a brand new class to come in and join the military brigades, as you're currently in a war between the Imperial Army of Erebonia and the Northern Jaegers of Northumbria. And the game is equal parts kind of Persona high school driven, where there's a lot of character-driven stuff, but it's also a very heavy war epic. So it balances a lot very carefully, and I really appreciate that it does that, because the game does a very nice job of balancing both kind of the lighthearted nature of a lot of JRPGs, while also maintaining the serious nature of what it means to enter a military academy as a youth in the height of war. I have played the Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior games since they released in the 1980s, when I received my copy of Dragon Warrior in the mail from Nintendo for being a Nintendo Power subscriber. I was blown away by the original entry in the series, and it's kind of the game that really ignited my love of console RPGs. That has carried forward now, some 30 plus years later, with Dragon Quest XI's Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition on the Nintendo Switch. Oh boy, how can I not tell you how wonderful this game is? It is a sprawling epic of a storyline. There is so much personality and life and soul and hope in this game that it's kind of the perfect version of Dragon Quest to me. I've liked pretty much every Dragon Quest game I've ever played, but Dragon Quest XI's is a masterpiece in every sense of the imagination, and it does not get better than having gorgeously rendered 3D versions of Akira Toriyama's character designs in HD. To me, the combat is fantastic. It's a classic turn-based RPG. Awesome different abilities that you're able to kind of chain onto other characters, which is great. And that's all lovely and wonderful and fantastic. But where this game shines to me is just how stunningly gorgeous it is. And I know I just recently said that graphics are kind of icing on the cake to me, but oh my god, this icing is amazing. This is a perfect RPG. I have not found anything in this game I don't particularly like. Now, it is a bit misogynistic at times, and that's a completely measured and understandable complaint about it, but at its core, this gameplay in this game is just magnificent.
Righto, you're all right.
Yes. Are you feeling better?
So Battle Chasers Night War for me has an incredibly interesting pedigree. I am a huge comic book fan. I've been collecting them since the 80s, and one of my favorite artists is Joe Madureira. I was introduced to Joe's work on the Uncanny X-Men. I thought he had just like the most signature distinct style, something that I had never really seen before in modern American comics, and I was heartbroken when he left Marvel to go move on to other things. But what we got out of that was the comic book Battle Chasers, which is incredible. Battle Chasers is like the perfect blend of steampunk and fantasy. Honestly, it's kind of Critical Role before Critical Role was Critical Role. The game takes that setting and it takes that style and that motif, and it gives us an incredible turn-based RPG developed by Airship Syndicate. It is a very easy game to fall into because the game is just so intuitive. Like, it doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. It doesn't do anything super crazy with the RPG format. It just gives you awesome character designs, a really cool map, and fun levels to explore and move around and use your abilities in to find secrets and discover loot and things like that. It really hits all the numbers exactly the way you want it to. I do want to call out one particular thing that I think it does really well, though. It does something called Overcharge, where if you use a standard attack rather than one of your special attacks, it'll actually tack on some extra mana for you to use with your abilities rather than using up your mana pool, which I think is just super clever and really smart. I played this one a lot on Game Pass when it was there, and I just recently picked this back up for the Switch because honestly, it's dirt cheap. It's like $13 on GameStop's site. And as someone who loves the art style of Battle Chasers and loves Joe Madureira's work, this one's a no-brainer for me. I really enjoyed this one because this to me is probably the most throwback of the RPGs on the list. Now there are some other ones on here like that are remakes of classic games, but this one to me just feels like something from the 90s, and I just think it's fantastic to play. For a lot of people, one of the chief complaints about the Nintendo Switch is that it's a port machine, and I say screw that because I love that I'm getting ports of classic games onto the Nintendo Switch from the Xbox 360, PS3, PS4, and Xbox One era. And one of my personal favorites that I played repeatedly and for hours on the Xbox 360 is Tales of Vesperia. I've spoken many times about my love of the Tales RPG series from Bandai Namco, and I think Tales of Vesperia is up there in my top 3 as to favorites. Now, if you've ever played a Tales series game, this is going to have a lot of the hallmarks of that series. Side conversations that are really funny, you're going to get deep character moments, you're going to learn more about the characters you're controlling and playing as, fantastic and varied combat mechanics, and a fun world to explore and learn more about with great characterization and voice acting. This is one of my favorites. It is a spectacular game. It's a wonderful nod to a great series and a fantastic game on its 10th anniversary release. If you have not played a Tales series game, I would suggest you check out Tales of Arise that recently released on the PS5 and the Xbox One first, but barring that, if you don't have access to either of those systems, or you just want something a little bit more affordable, Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition will not go wrong for you. The Ys series has been around for decades, and it continuously amazes me how the series is able to refresh itself and introduce new mechanics while still maintaining a true core sense of what Ys is. And Ys 9 Monstrum Nox on the Nintendo Switch is no different. This is an action RPG. You're able to switch your characters on the fly. It is a huge world, a massive story, fantastic characters that if you have played any Ys games before, you're going to be familiar with. But there's kind of some new aspects tossed into this, and this goes into kind of the discussion about how Ys continuously refreshes itself and continuously makes itself relevant in the RPG space. And one of the big things it adds is traversal abilities for all of the characters you're able to control. Now, you're not just locked into one particular area anymore. You're able to, for instance, run up walls, which is pretty awesome in the grand scheme of things, allowing you to navigate more easily or to more difficult to reach areas to find secrets and treasures and things like that. It's just a wonderful title. If you have never played an Ys game, this is a really good one to jump in on, or you can check out Ys Origin, also on the Switch. This is just the one I prefer a little bit more. Ys Origin is a significantly more traditional RPG. This one's a little bit more action-oriented, but both of them are absolutely wonderful. So after playing various fan translations for years of Trials of Mana, which never made it stateside, in 2020 we had this just absolutely stunning 3D remake released in the States. Now, we had gotten Trials of Mana, which was localized as well in the Collection of Mana on the Switch, but to get a full 3D remake of the game is super special because it feels completely new, despite the fact being almost identical to its original form. Trials of Mana is an action RPG. You're going to be able to play as one of 6 different protagonists that you're able to pick at the start of the game. All of the quests and everything kind of intertwine eventually. So if there's a particular character that you love, you're going to get more story for the character you choose towards the beginning, but things tie together in the middle and kind of end the same way. Real-time combat as you play, lots of different traditional RPG elements involved here, but the game is just really special. Like, I love the Mana series, and being able to get this one breathing new life into the franchise was just such a wonderful thing for Square to do. Like, this was a huge nod to what Western gamers can expect and what we can anticipate from Square. Now, I hope that translates into getting things like a Chrono Trigger HD 2D remaster down the road. I surely wouldn't be upset by that. And of course, we are getting the Chrono Cross remake later this year, which Chrono Cross was near the top of my list. So for me personally, thank you, Square Enix, for doing that. But Trials of Mana is a wonderful game, absolutely stunning visuals, and just wonderful gameplay abound in it. Definitely pick this one up. If you've never played this one on the SNES or played it in the Collection of Mana, definitely worth checking out.
I've returned from the raid.
So it's really interesting to me that the first time I played Final Fantasy XII when I owned it on the PlayStation 2, I couldn't stand it. So I had a little bit of trepidation when I was told kind of repeatedly how great this version of it was, Final Fantasy XII The Zodiac Age on the Switch. And I kind of hemmed and hawed about picking it up, but I finally did, and I was talking to my friend Ren from Hallowed Be Thy Game. Ren, if I'm misremembering this, I apologize, but because it's been like a year since we talked about this now, but when we first had played the game, we didn't really care for it, but going back to it subsequent times on the Switch, our eyes were kind of open to how brilliant the design of this game is. Now, this is an action RPG. This is a very... If you have played anything since Final Fantasy XII, like if you played Final Fantasy XV, there's a lot of familiarity that you're going to experience from that game as to what you're going to see in this one. The storyline is very deep. I dig that it takes place on Ivalice, which is where Final Fantasy Tactics took place. I think that's wonderful. It's got a massive open world, seamless battles where you're not just going to stop and go into combat, you're actually just going to fight on the main world. And that leads to some interesting situations where you're going to have pile-on from other enemies. It's kind of a perfect action RPG to me. Now, there are a lot of action RPGs on the Switch, and I could have included a ton of them on here, but for me, Final Fantasy XII The Zodiac Age is the best of them all. Alright, this will not be the only version of this video that happens. I guarantee you down the road there will be another edition of 10 Great RPGs on the Switch because there's just no shortage of fantastic games. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite RPG is on the Switch. I know there's going to be suggestions for Shin Megami Tensei 3 and Shin Megami Tensei 5, and I'm sure they're great. I just haven't had a chance to play them yet. My backlog is massive. I will get to it eventually. Please hit like, please subscribe if you're new around here, and hey, if you really dig the work I do, consider becoming a monthly Patreon sponsor or channel member. For a donation of as little as $1 a month, patrons and channel members get ad-free early access to all of my videos, as well as behind-the-scenes exclusive videos. And if you're in a position to help the channel more directly, consider picking up some of my merchandise at squarepegs.yt.com. Until next time, folks, I've been Jay. Appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me today. Be sure to check out the videos up here where I look at other top 10 lists on the Nintendo Switch. And remember to play more games, stay square, and take care. I'll talk to you soon.